My plan is to hide, to avoid, but if I get busted, if I get captured, I'm not going to do a Rambo, I'm going to do a Gandhi. If I get captured, I'm not going to do a Rambo, I'm going to do a Gandhi. If I get captured, I'm not going to do a Rambo, I'm going to do a Gandhi.
All right, hey everyone, does that sound like a dangerous domestic terrorist to you that's conspiring to murder federal officials? Anybody that knows the heart of Schaeffer Cox knows that he was standing up for liberty and freedom, our Second Amendment, speaking out against corrupt law enforcement officials, child sex trafficking, drug running, and he was speaking out against the Federal Reserve. He was doing exactly what he should be doing, and they put him in prison to shut him up. That's his address right there. We've got another important writing from Ray Southwell in support of Schaeffer Cox number 13. You can go to whoframeschaeffercox.com. He's got Angela Clemens has done a wonderful job. She's got a prison blog where she puts up all of Schaeffer's writings, or a lot of them. The homepage, you can contact, donate, support letters. I need to write one myself. But praise God for Angela Clemens. You've also got yearofjubilee.com. We've got several pages up here for Cox, Skylar Barbeau, Charles Dyer, Russell Dean Landers, Jeffrey Winehouse, Bryce Matthew Quellar, Ed and Elaine Brown, including Jason Gerhard and Daniel Riley. And then we have the P3s in Nevada, Jason Patrick and Blaine Cooper, and we have Lonnie and Karen Vernon. Okay, so you guys, if you go down, if you click the Cox page, Schaeffer Cox, and go down, you'll see a whole section in support of Schaeffer Cox by Ray Southwell, and we've put number 13 right here. So in case you would just want to read it for yourself and you don't want to hear me reading it on YouTube, you can certainly go to Year of Jubilee, and we've got it there for you to download in a PDF file. So let me zoom in on this just a bit. Let me zoom in to say 200%. Okay, hopefully you guys see that. That's Ray Southwell and his wife. We praise God for men like Ray Southwell who speak up and say the truth. And we praise God for his courage, for speaking the truth about a brother that's been captured by the enemy that is behind enemy lines. I do not know what we're going to read today. I have not read it. My wife just sent it to me, and I made a Word document out of it and uploaded it to the webpage, but I have not actually read it. So we're going to read it together. In support of Schaeffer Cox, number 13, June the 14th, the year 2017. As a registered nurse for 36 years, I had a close working relationship with nurses I stood beside. It took a little time to understand the content of their character. We would fight together to save lives and sometimes weep when we failed that goal. How hard it was to take an infant from a mother's arms who would beg us to save her child's life. We would try and too often fail, not because of any fault of ours, but rather the reality of the human condition. Attorneys also have a similar working relationship. They also work with human life, sometimes failing to bring justice. Often not a fault of their own, but sometimes some attorneys are driven by their own self-interest, winning regardless of truth or justice. It is my belief Joseph W. Bottini and Stephen E. Scrocky are two such attorneys. Both are working for the Department of Justice, Anchorage, Alaska's office, working side by side for 26 years. According to Stephen E. Scrocky, previously posted resume, he has worked in the Department of Justice in Alaska since 1991. All those years in the Anchorage office, one of the 3 Department of Justice offices in Alaska. Bottini, too, had worked in the Anchorage office since 1985. Bottini and Scrocky worked on the Schaeffer Cox case together. I imagine they worked closely over their entire legal career, both of which had been completely within the Department of Justice Anchorage office. Like all professionals who work together, we know the processes others use in our work-related field. As a nurse, I was aware of the qualities and weaknesses of those nurses I worked with, rarely but sometimes discussing management concerns I had about patient care. I worked at many hospitals over the years. I was union leadership at one of those hospitals. I am an advocate for nurses, but never placed my nurse support over the patient care delivered. Like the Department of Justice, I helped institute peer review in the disciplinary process for nurses. Sometimes nurses were blamed for a failure in the delivery of care, but in 1999 the healthcare industry started to change. It was recognized failures in the delivery of healthcare were related to process failures rather than nurse delivering the care, for to err is human. I asked for a peer review when nurses were disciplined. If they had professional support, I would fight tooth and nail to demonstrate the process failure rather than the nurse involved. I find it amazing that the Department of Justice did not follow their own protocol in disciplining Joseph W. Bottini. His discipline was overturned because a peer review was not done. Management punished him against Department of Justice policy. Could they be that inept? Perhaps the Department of Justice gave Bottini a way out of his financial loss, an escape clause, if you will, for his discipline. Nevertheless, it is clear Mr. Bottini is an evil doer in the Department of Justice. It's trying to restart my computer right as I'm reading this thing. It's very frustrating. Nevertheless, it is clear Mr. Bottini is an evildoer in the Department of Justice. The question is why? We don't need to answer that question in regards to Schaeffer Cox case. Only understand how things work in the Department of Justice Anchorage office. Can you believe it's trying to restart my computer right now? No, I don't want to do that. Yeah, that's fine. Let's do that later. We can see the motivation of Stephen E. Scrocky corrupt behavior in the Cox case, for he wants to become a federal judge in Alaska. Heaven forbid he accomplish his self-serving goal. Could Stephen E. Scrocky not have known Bottini's behavior in the Ted Stevens case? Not hardly, for they worked side by side for 2 decades prior to the Stevens case. Scrocky knew how Bottini operated in cases, so in the least, Scrocky fully understood Bottini lied and cheated to win cases. In the worst, Stephen E. Scrocky acted just like Bottini, lying and cheating to win his own cases. According to his request for a federal judgeship, he used the Cox case for his advancement. It is clear in my mind Bottini and Scrocky are 2 peas in a pod, identical in behavior when it comes to prosecutorial misconduct. Scrocky has demonstrated his own self-interest by using the corrupt conviction of my friend Schaeffer Cox for his own personal advancement. I don't know what Bottini's motivation was in regards to the lies he perpetrated against Senator Ted Stevens and others. Perhaps if his evil behavior was not exposed in the Ted Stevens case, he would also be applying for the vacant federal judge position. Next time, how to do to Stephen E. Scrocky what he did to Schaeffer Cox, economic hardship. Signed, Ray Southwell, Nikiski, Alaska. There's also another post that Aaron told me that Ray Southwell posted just a few days ago. I wanted to read it too, just to get it on the record. Keep in mind this is different than in support of Schaeffer Cox number 13. Ray Southwell writes, "This is promising. Michael Filipovic is representing Schaeffer in the upcoming appeal hearing in August. Filipovic also represented an Alaskan legislator by the name of Coring back in 2011. According to the attached, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit today unanimously vacated PDF the conviction of Victor Coring, a former member of the Alaska House of Representatives. Federal prosecutors in Alaska shirked their obligation to turn over exculpatory and impeachment information to Coring's lawyers," the court said. "It must be why Scrocky is front and center on Cox's appeal. Scrocky fears he will be exposed as an evildoer, as is Bottini. Remember how much exculpatory evidence was withheld in the Senator Ted Stevens case? There's also a Chad Joy whistleblower report that you guys need to look into. For Scrocky's friend and associate, Bottini was responsible for withholding exculpatory evidence in Coring's case. I continue to prayerfully visualize the miracle of Schaeffer stepping out from prison in the sunlight, his eyes being sore from it. Then he catches a glimpse of motion to realize his kids are running up the steps towards him. Please visualize this prayer many times throughout the day." I certainly will do that, Mr. Ray Southwell. I pray you guys write Schaeffer Cox a letter. That's his address on the screen. And in closing, the last line of peaceful defense between a tyrannical government and the defendant is jury nullification. Educate yourself about jury nullification at fija.org, Fija.org.